You won't believe what my grandson Lucas whispered to me that night. I was half asleep. The house was quiet. And then I heard the soft creak of my bedroom door. What happened next, what he said, left me utterly speechless, and it changed the way I saw everything. It wasn't what I expected. It was so much more. Where are you watching from? Type your city in the comments. I want to know how far this story reaches. I never thought I'd be sharing this with anyone, let alone speaking it aloud. But something about that night has stayed with me in a way I can't quite explain. Maybe it's the silence that followed. Or maybe it's just that in the stillness of those moments, I felt seen. Really seen for the first time in what feels like years. It was late. Nearly 11:30, if I remember right. I'd already turned in for the night, wrapped up in my cotton robe, curled beneath that old quilt my mother stitched together decades ago. The house was quiet, just the hum of the fridge and the occasional rustle of wind against the windows. Lucas had come to stay with me for the weekend. His parents had gone off on some trip, and I offered to watch over him, even though he was perfectly capable of looking after himself at 25. I didn't expect anything unusual about that evening. We'd had dinner, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, my usual comfort food, and watched an old black and white film on TV. I thought he'd gone to bed hours ago, but just as I was drifting off, I heard the door handle click softly, followed by the faintest creak of hinges. I opened my eyes slowly, blinking against the warm, dim light that spilled in from the hallway. And there he was, Lucas. His silhouette, framed in the doorway, one hand resting lightly against the doorframe. My heart jumped a bit. I wasn't scared, just startled. "Lucas," I whispered, my voice scratchy with sleep. "Everything all right?" He hesitated, which was odd for him. Lucas was always so sure, so confident in his movements. He cleared his throat and took a cautious step inside. Yeah, I just ... I couldn't sleep. I sat up a little, gathering the quilt around me. "Come in, sweetie. Sit. What's on your mind?" He walked slowly to the side of the bed and perched on the edge. His eyes focused somewhere on the floor. The quiet stretched out between us, thick and full of something I couldn't quite name. I watched him, really watched him. The way his jaw flexed, the way his fingers fidgeted with the seam of his shirt. Something was weighing on him. "I've just been thinking," he said finally, "about a lot of things, about time, about you." That surprised me. I hadn't realized I'd been a thought in his world lately. We're close, yes, but sometimes I feel like the older I get, the more I fade into the background. Like wallpaper, familiar, comforting, but rarely noticed. I reached out and placed my hand gently over his. "What about me, darling?" He looked up then, and his eyes, they held so much. Not sadness exactly, but a kind of longing. A deep reflective ache that I recognized only because I'd felt it too in the quiet hours when the world forgets us. "You're still you, Grandma," he said. "I don't think people see that. I think they see your age, your grey hair, the lines on your hands. But I see you, the woman who always danced barefoot in the kitchen when no one was looking, the one who hummed while painting, who told me stories like they were secrets meant only for me." My throat tightened. That simple honesty, the warmth behind his words, struck me in a place I thought had long gone numb. "Oh, Lucas," I managed, brushing a bit of hair from his forehead. "That means more than you know." He smiled, a soft, slow smile. Then he leaned back a little and sighed. I just needed to say it. I don't know why, but it felt important. "You've always been the strong one in our family, the quiet kind of strong. And I think I'm just starting to realize how rare that is." I didn't respond right away. I couldn't. My heart was too full and my mind too busy unspooling memories I hadn't visited in years. Of late nights feeding a colicky baby that was once his father. Of dancing to jazz records with my late husband, while the rain tapped against the windows. Of all the lives I'd lived inside this same body that now ached with age. We sat in that stillness for a long time. Just the two of us. I could hear his breathing calm and even, and feel the warmth of his hand beneath mine. I don't know if he... I love you too, Lucas, I whispered, holding his hand just a little tighter. More than you'll ever know. He stayed for a few more minutes, then gave me a small, grateful smile before slipping back into the hallway and quietly closing the door behind him. I lay awake long after that, staring at the shadows on the ceiling. I didn't feel old then. I didn't feel invisible. I felt alive. Like maybe, just maybe, the most unexpected moments in life are the ones that make us feel most human. And that night, that soft, unassuming moment, reminded me I still mattered. Not for what I used to be, but for who I still am. The morning sunlight crept through the lace curtains, casting gentle patterns on the bedroom floor. I lay still in bed longer than usual, the warmth of the rising sun brushing over my face. But it wasn't just the weather keeping me from getting up. It was the feeling still lingering from the night before. Lucas's words had been echoing in my mind like a melody I didn't want to forget. You're still you. It's such a simple thing, isn't it? And yet no one had said it to me in years, maybe decades. When you're 78, people tend to talk around you. They assume you've retired from living, from feeling, from wanting. They lower their voices, slow their speech, and suddenly you're just someone they check in on. But Lucas, he saw me, and I wasn't ready to let that go. After getting dressed and tying my robe around me, I shuffled to the kitchen and found him already there, barefoot, wearing one of those soft old t-shirts that always looked too small on his broad frame. He was scrambling eggs, the skillet sizzling gently. "Morning," I said, watching him from the doorway. He turned to look at me and smiled. A real one, easy and boyish. "Hey, I figured you could use a slow start today. I could get used to this." I chuckled, stepping in to join him. "You didn't have to do all this, you know." "I wanted to." He handed me a warm mug of coffee. Just how I like it, 2 sugars, a dash of milk, no questions asked. That made me pause. The little things always do. We sat at the small round table near the window, eating in comfortable silence for a few minutes. The morning birds chirped outside, and I found myself glancing at him more often than I normally would. Not in any inappropriate way, just thoughtful, curious. Lucas had always been a kind young man, but there was something different. Now, a depth in him I hadn't noticed before. He broke the silence. "Do you remember when I was a kid and I used to crawl into your bed during storms?" I laughed lightly, shaking my head. "Of course I do. You'd come in with those little dinosaur pajamas and clutch your stuffed bear like your life depended on it." He smiled and looked down at his plate. "I don't think it was really the storm that scared me. I think I just felt safer near you. That touched me more deeply than he could have known. There's something about knowing someone has always found comfort in your presence. It affirms you, especially when the rest of the world has started to look past you." "I never minded," I said softly. "In fact, I looked forward to it even when I pretended I didn't." He looked at me then, directly, unflinching. "I think I needed that feeling again last night. I've been going through some things lately, and I don't know. Something told me I should talk to you like I used to." I put my fork down and leaned in, resting my chin on my hand. "What's going on, Lucas? You know, you can tell me anything." He hesitated. I could see it again, that same hesitation from the night before. His hands rubbed together on the table, his fingers nervous. "It's just ... I've been feeling disconnected lately. Like I'm not sure where I belong at work, in relationships, even with my own parents. It's like I'm doing everything I'm supposed to, but none of it feels real. I nodded slowly. That's not just a young person's struggle, sweetheart. That feeling of floating above your own life. I know it too well. His eyes met mine again, and this time there was a kind of searching in them. You do? Oh, yes, I said. There's this assumption that by the time you're my age, everything makes sense. But it doesn't. You just get better at hiding the questions. But they're still there. Quiet ones like, did I miss something? Am I still needed? A long silence settled between us. Then, a good one. One filled with the comfort of honesty. Lucas reached across the table and placed his hand over mine again. Just like the night before. It didn't feel strange. It didn't feel forced. It just felt warm. I don't think I've ever really asked you about your life before me, he said. Before you were Grandma. Who were you, Ashley? That name, my name, sounded so fresh coming from his mouth. Not Grandma, not Nana, just Ashley. Like I was a woman with a story. A whole life that mattered. I smiled faintly. I was a dancer once, not professionally, but in my heart. I used to take classes downtown when your grandfather was stationed. Overseas. I was young, restless. I'd dance for hours and lose track of time. Why did you stop? He asked gently. I shrugged, though the truth was heavier than my shoulders could bear. Life asked me to be other things. A wife, a mother, a provider. So I gave it all of me, and I don't regret it. But sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if I'd held on to just a little more of her. Lucas nodded like he understood, even if he couldn't fully. I want to know more about her. About you. I reached out, brushing my fingers through the edge of his hair, the way I used to when he was small. Then ask me. I'm right here. And for the rest of the morning, that's what we did. We sat at that little kitchen table and talked. Really talked. He asked questions about my first kiss, about the first time I drove a car, about the night I met his grandfather. And I told him I opened the vault and let the pieces of myself come alive again. And for the first time in years, I wasn't just remembering. I was reliving. Something had shifted between us. Something quiet and beautiful. It wasn't just grandmother and grandson anymore. It was two souls meeting in the middle of time, bridging the gap between youth and age, learning to see each other not as roles but as people. And deep down I knew this weekend would change us both forever. That afternoon the weather shifted. Thick clouds rolled in over the hills, and the light in the house softened to a grey that made everything feel closer. Quieter, like the world had lowered its voice to a hush. Lucas and I had moved to the living room, each curled up at opposite ends of the couch with a blanket tossed over our legs. It was the kind of silence that doesn't ask to be filled, the kind you only find with someone who knows how to sit still with you. I just finished telling him about a road trip I'd taken in my 20s, back when I believed California was the answer to all my questions. He listened like I was reciting scripture, eyes locked on me, the rhythm of my voice holding him in place. You were so brave, he said softly, after I told him how I'd slept in my old VW Beetle for 2 nights outside a beach town, where I knew no one. I don't think I could ever do that. I'd looked at him not as my grandson, not even as a man in his 20s, just as a soul, one he felt deeply may be too much. You're braver than you think, Lucas. Being lost and still searching. That takes a kind of courage most people never even try. He smiled faintly, lowering his gaze, and then said, I think you're the first person to really see me like that. That quiet moment sat between us like a breath held too long. Something shifted again, subtle but unmistakable. I could feel it. In the way his foot brushed mine under the blanket, lingering just a second longer than chance allowed. Not intentional, perhaps, but not accidental either. I didn't move it away. Instead, I tilted my head and asked, "What do you see when you look at me, Lucas?" Not Grandma, not Ashley, just me. He didn't answer at first. His brows furrowed a little, like he wasn't sure if he should say it or how. "I see someone I wish I could have known earlier," he said finally, "before the rest of life wore you down. Someone full of fire. Someone whose stories I should have asked for years ago." He paused, then quieter. "Someone I feel closer to than I've ever felt to anyone." I swallowed hard, not because his words scared me, but because I recognized them. I'd felt it too. Something gentle but charged, not romantic, not anything so. Simple or forbiddance, just human. A rare closeness built not on roles or expectations, but honesty. "You're not the only one who feels that way," I said. And it was true. Somewhere in our shared conversations, I had stopped seeing him as the little boy I once tucked in. He was a man now, one with questions and fears and depth and more tenderness than I'd ever imagined. I reached for his hand, not with purpose, not with meaning, but just because it felt right. It was warm, solid, and for a long minute we just sat there like that. The rain began softly, pattering against the windows like fingertips on glass. He shifted closer, not too close, but enough that his shoulder brushed mine and rested his head. Back on the cushion. "I wish I didn't have to go home tomorrow," he said. I turned to him, studying the slope of his cheek, the tired in his eyes, the way he spoke with a kind of quiet vulnerability. "Why don't you stay another night?" He glanced at me. "You sure?" I smiled. I haven't had company like this in a long time. "It's been good for me." He hesitated. Then gently he leaned his head against my shoulder. "It's been good for me, too." We stayed like that until the rain stopped. And when the power flickered out an hour later, as it often does during summer, storms in my part of town, we lit candles and played records from my old collection. Music from a time he didn't grow up in, but somehow felt drawn to. He stood and held out his hand. "Come on, dance with me." I laughed, shaking my head. "Lucas, my knees aren't what they used to be." "I'll go slow," he promised, a grin spreading across his face. So I let him pull me to my feet. I let him guide my hands to his shoulders and his arms to my waist. And we danced barefoot across the living room floor. A record crackled beneath the soft jazz trumpet, and the candlelight flickered against the walls like we were somewhere far away from time. He looked into my eyes as we moved, and I saw something there. Not desire, not confusion, just clarity. A deep mutual understanding. "You're still that dancer," he whispered. "I see her." And in that moment, I believed it too. We didn't speak much after that. He helped me to bed, kissed my forehead like he had the night before, and stood in the doorway again like he had them. But this time, before he left, he looked back and said, "Thank you, Ashley." And I said, "Thank you, Lucas, for reminding me." When the door closed behind him, I lay in the dark with my heart fuller than it had been in years. Whatever had grown between us wasn't about lines or definitions. It was about truth, presence, seeing and being seen. And it was only just beginning. The next morning was different. Not because of what had happened. There had been no grand moment, no kiss under the stars, no lines crossed, but something had settled between us. Like the dust that floats in the light after movement, it was peaceful, grounded, whole. I woke up to the smell of fresh toast and the sound of a pan clinking gently on the stove. Lucas again. He was humming. That same old Sam Cooke song we danced to the night before. It made me smile before I even opened my eyes. I wrapped my robe around me and shuffled into the kitchen. He turned when he heard me, that easy grin already. There, waiting. "Morning, Ashley," he said. Not Grandma. Ashley, as if it were his way of honoring the woman I'd been before he ever knew me. "Good morning," I said, my voice warm with sleep. He pulled out a chair for me and set a plate down. Toast, eggs, and a small bowl of strawberries he must have found in the back of the fridge. Figured we keep the tradition going. We ate slowly, not rushing a thing. He asked more about my past, about the friends I'd lost touch with, the books I used to read, the dreams I'd set aside. I answered all of it, and I asked about him too. About the girl who'd broken his heart last winter. About why he left that job he worked so hard to get. About how often he feels like he's just floating through life without direction. We didn't hold back. We didn't need to. The comfort had become something sacred. Eventually, I stood and moved to the window, sipping the last of my coffee. "You know," I said quietly, "I used to think that after a certain age life stopped surprising. That you'd seen all the chapters, and now it was just rereading the same lines." Lucas came to stand beside me, close enough that I could feel his presence even without looking. "And now?" I glanced up at him and smiled. "Now I realize there's always another chapter waiting. You just have to be willing to turn the page." He nodded slowly. "You helped me turn mine, you know." That got me. That one sentence spoken so sincerely reached somewhere deep. I looked at him not as my grandson, not as a younger man, not even as family, but as someone I'd come to know and respect and feel for in ways I couldn't fully explain. "I'm glad you stayed," I said. "I'm glad I came," he replied. There was a long pause then. One of those pauses where words don't really matter because everything important has already been said. The quiet wasn't awkward. It was heavy with meaning. But then he broke it with a soft laugh. "You know, I've never told anyone the things I told you this weekend." I chuckled gently. "I guess I'm a good listener." He shook his head. "It's more than that. You make me feel safe, not judged. Like I could be completely myself, and you'd still see something good in me." My eyes watered just a little. "That's because there is something good in you. So much of it." He reached for my hand again the way he had before, and held it between both of his. It didn't feel odd. It didn't feel inappropriate. It felt like two people holding on to something they knew would slip away too easily if they didn't. "I'm going to visit more often," he said. "You better," I teased. He grinned, but there was something softer beneath it. "I mean it. I don't want this what we found to fade." "It doesn't have to," I said. "We just have to keep choosing it." And maybe that was the truest thing either of us had said. That afternoon, he packed up his bag. I helped him, folding his shirt sleeves just right, slipping a little note into the side pocket like I used to when he went off to school. At the door, he hugged me tight, tighter than usual. He smelled like cedarwood and fresh soap, and I pressed my cheek against his shoulder just a moment longer than I needed to. "I love you, Ashley," he whispered. "I love you too, Lucas," replied, "exactly as you are." He stepped back, his eyes shining with something he didn't try to hide. "Goodbye for now." "Not goodbye," I corrected. "Just until next time." And then he was gone. The house felt quiet after that, but not empty. His presence still lingered in the way the air felt warmer, in the folded blankets, in the echoes of our laughter still hanging in the corners of each room. I sat by the window that night, journal in my lap, pen in hand. I wrote it all down. Everything he said, everything I felt. Not just so I wouldn't forget, but because I wanted to remember what it felt like to be seen. To be loved not for what I had been, but for who I still was. I realized then that life doesn't stop offering us new beginnings, not even at 78. And sometimes the most unexpected beautiful connection comes not from romance, not from the outside world, but from being truly understood by someone who sees past everything else and looks straight into your heart. That weekend didn't just bring me closer to Lucas. It brought me back to